Usually when you go to the beach, you expect a certain rhythm to the day, right?
Oh, for sure. Sun, sand, maybe good book.
Exactly. You lay out your towel, you open up your cooler to grab a sandwich, and inevitably a seagull swoops down to try and steal a French fry.
Right. They're relentless.
They really are. And you just assume the bird is hungry. I mean, that is the basic logical assumption of how nature operates.
Yeah, animals eat food because they need to survive.
But imagine watching that bird aggressively snatch your food, fly maybe, I don't know, 3 feet away, and just drop it in the sand.
Wait, drop it, not eat it.
Not eat it. It just stands over it, puffing its chest out, making absolutely sure that no other bird can get anywhere near that fry.
That's so weird. That's a completely bizarre sight.
It's a super bizarre sight on the beach, but if you look closely at your dating life, you might actually realize someone is playing exactly the same game with your time. So, okay, let's unpack this.
I love this analogy because it completely defies our foundational understanding of how attraction and relationships are supposed to work.
Right.
Like the instinct is to assume that if someone is fighting to keep you in their orbit, fighting to keep others away from you, well, it must mean they harbor some hidden, burning desire to be with you.
We're so conditioned to think that, like, oh, they're so jealous, they must really love me.
Exactly. We are culturally conditioned to read possessiveness as this, like, messy form of love.
And that's exactly why we're doing this today. Because to help us decode what is actually happening when possessiveness is completely divorced from romantic intent, we are looking at a really fascinating piece of source material.
Which I found super eye-opening, by the way.
Yeah, me too. It's an article from Psychology Today by Dr. Bruce Wiley, and it's titled, "What Does Seagulling Mean When It Comes to Dating?"
Such a great term.
It is. So our mission for this deck dive is to equip you, the listener, with the psychological tools to identify this very specific, incredibly draining trap, understand the mechanisms of why people do it, and give you the exact boundaries you need to protect your time.
Because spotting it in the wild is really the crucial first step. If you
Yeah.
don't know what you're looking at, you're just confused.
Totally. So let's define it.
Right. Dr. Lee defines seagulling as a scenario where a person has absolutely no real romantic interest in pursuing a committed relationship with you. None at all.
But they don't leave you alone, right?
No, that's the thing. They actively work to keep anyone else from getting close to you. So, tying it back to your intro, the seagull is the dater, the French fry is you, and the hunger, or really the distinct lack of it, is romantic desire.
It really just sounds exactly like a toddler hoarding a toy they don't even want to play with.
Oh, that's a perfect way to look at it.
Like they haven't touched the toy in a went, but just because another kid looked at it, suddenly it's their favorite toy again.
Yes, the mine but not for me mentality.
But wait, I'm struggling to see the real difference here. I mean, people have strung each other along since the dawn of dating. How is seagulling not just like a trendy new vocabulary word for being strung along, or even just a weird variation of ghosting?
That's a really good question, and the distinction is important. So, unlike ghosting, where someone takes the coward's way out and completely vanishes to avoid uncomfortable conversations.
Right, ghosters just disappear. Poof.
Exactly. And stringing you along is where they passively keep you on the back burner. They're keeping you as an option while they scan the room for someone they perceive as better.
Okay, so that's passive.
Yes. But the seaguller is doing something entirely different. The key differentiator here is the active blockade.
Ah, okay. So stringing someone along is passive. They're keeping their own options open. Seagulling is active. They're building a fence around me so my options are closed.
You nailed it. They are acting as a bouncer at the door of your dating life. They're turning away all other contenders while refusing to actually take you out on a real date themselves.
Wow. And the tactics they use to maintain this blockade, they're super specific, right? The article mentions dead-end dates.
Yes, highly specific and deeply manipulative. The seagull might take you on these dead-end dates, which aren't designed to progress toward a relationship or deepen emotional intimacy at all.
So what's the point of the date then?
They are strategic maintenance. The dates serve the singular purpose of keeping your hopes just high enough that you don't, download a dating app or agree to grab coffee with a coworker.
Just giving you enough to stay on the hook. And the source also mentions they offer these little trinkets of affection to stop you from moving on.
The trinkets are so insidious.
I want to dig into that because a trinket isn't a grand romantic gesture. It's not a dozen roses. It's like a late night text that says, thinking of you.
Or a fiery reaction to your Instagram story out of nowhere.
Yes. Or suddenly remembering the name of your childhood dog right when they sense you pulling away. Like they feel the distance and they throw a trinket at you.
Exactly. And those trinkets are the psychological equivalent of pulling the lever on a slot machine. They operate on what behavioral psychology calls an intermittent variable reward schedule.
Right, which is the most addictive kind of schedule.
Precisely.
Yeah.
If a slot machine paid out every single time, you'd actually get bored pretty quickly.
Okay.
And if it never paid out, you just walk away. But because it pays out unpredictably, you stay glued to the stool. The seaguller drops just enough breadcrumbs to trigger a dopamine spike in your brain, and that keeps you trapped in a holding pattern.
So they are actively managing your environment so that you remain exclusively available to them
Huh.
while they remain entirely uncommitted to you. That's intense.
It is. It's a lot of effort for someone they don't want to date.
And what really stands out in Dr. Lee's piece is that this doesn't just happen in the murky talking phase of a new connection. This behavior thrives in the aftermath of a breakup.
Oh, absolutely. Exes are prime suspects for seagulling.
Right, like you could have an ex who initiated the split, who looked you in the eye and said they lost feelings, but the moment you start to move on, they suddenly reappear.
Right when you're looking happy again.
Exactly. You post a picture with someone new, and suddenly your ex is in your DMs reminiscing about your anniversary trip.
Going back to your toddler analogy, the toddler isn't acting out of a renewed passion for the toy. They are acting out of a perceived loss of ownership.
It's all about ownership.
The ex hovering around your new life is doing the exact same thing. They don't want to rebuild the relationship. They just want to ensure you remain an extension of their own territory.
So if their goal isn't to be with you, we have to look at the why. If they aren't actually hungry for a relationship, what is the psychological payoff for dedicating so much time and energy to keeping you trapped?
Well, the source outlines a few very concrete, tangible motivations. At a surface level, the seagull just isn't ready to let go of whatever resources they are currently extracting from you.
Resources like what? Emotional support?
Emotional support, consistent companionship, without the heavy lifting of a real partnership. It could be status, like perhaps you elevate their standing in certain social circles or professional networks.
Or even financial perks, right? Like you're picking up the tab on these dead-end dates.
Exactly. They want all the benefits of having a partner, completely stripped of the responsibilities.
Dr. Lee notes this is heavily rooted in possessiveness and control. I think he calls it food for someone who likes to manipulate.
Which is a chilling way to put it, but very accurate.
Yeah. Having you on standby, knowing you will drop everything to answer their text, provides a massive continuous ego boost. But, okay, here's where it gets really interesting.
Oh, I know what you're going to say.
The article drops this fascinating caveat that the seaguller might not always consciously realize they are doing it. So I have to ask, are we usually looking at a calculated, malicious mastermind here, or is this just rooted in profound emotional laziness?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it is rarely a villain sitting in a lair drawing up blueprints to ruin your dating life.
Right, they're not twirling a mustache.
No, not at all. More often than not, whether it's bubbling up consciously or subconsciously, this behavior is driven by deep-seated insecurity disguising itself as control.
Because the dating world is inherently chaotic, right?
Extremely chaotic.
Yeah.
It requires vulnerability, and vulnerability carries the very real risk of painful rejection.
So for someone terrified of that chaos, building a perimeter around you provides a psychological safety net.
Exactly. If they have someone on layaway, someone they could perfectly control, someone whose affection is guaranteed, they never have to face the cold reality of feeling unwanted.
They're literally using your genuine affection as an emotional pacifier.
That's exactly what it is. And they often use ethical loopholes to rationalize this behavior to themselves.
Oh, the ethical loopholes. This is where cognitive dissonance comes into play, right?
Right. The seaguller wants to perceive themselves as a good ethical person. But to resolve the tension between, I am a good person and I am actively sabotaging this person's chance at love, they lean heavily on labels like, we're just friends.
Ah, we're just friends. Covers a multitude of sins.
It really does. In their mind, because they haven't explicitly promised you a committed relationship, they think they're technically off the hook for any emotional damage they cause.
Even while they actively manipulate your feelings. That's so wild. But, understanding that psychological mechanism, the fact that they are just soothing their own insecurities and hiding behind technicalities, that is incredibly empowering for anyone listening who might be stuck in this dynamic right now.
It really is, because it fundamentally shifts the locus of control.
How so?
Well, when you are on the receiving end of seagulling, the natural human reaction is to internalize it. You think, if I'm just a little more patient, if I'm a little more supportive, if I look a little better, they'll finally realize my worth and commit.
Yeah, we always blame ourselves, like, what am I doing wrong?
But you cannot earn a commitment from someone whose primary goal is control. Realizing that their behavior is entirely about insulating their own fragile ego and has absolutely nothing to do with your adequacy or worthiness, that breaks the spell.
That's such a relief to hear. You aren't failing at a relationship, you are just participating in a game where the other person has rigged the rules, so nobody wins.
Nobody wins.
So if their goal is just building this psychological safety net, what actually happens to the person caught inside the net?
The source is quite blunt about the fallout here. For the victim, Dr. Lee points out that you end up being gullible.
Oh, nice pun. I love a good pun.
It's clever, right? But you end up fooled by someone whose underlying intentions are fundamentally misaligned with your well-being. The most immediate damage is a staggering waste of your time.
Time you can never get back.
Time, emotional bandwidth, effort, all poured into a black hole of someone else's ego.
And the unpredictability of those variable rewards, the slot machine effect we talked about, that actively feeds your own insecurities over time, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. You start doubting your own perception of reality. You read into every single text, trying to decipher a hidden meaning that just isn't there.
Right. As Dr. Lee humorously points out in the article, I really want to be manipulated is not a normal dating goal.
No one writes that on their dating profile.
No, but when you stay in a dynamic governed by a seagull, that is the reality you are tacitly accepting. But it's almost ironic, right?
What is?
They are so obsessed with guarding the French fry they don't want to eat that they're starving themselves of a real relationship. They're self-sabotaging.
Yes. The tragedy of the situation is that it is a profound lose-lose scenario. The seaguller is essentially starving themselves too.
Because they're expending massive amounts of energy guarding a perimeter.
Managing the breadcrumbs, hovering over a connection they refuse to fully experience. By hoarding a connection out of fear, they are burning the months or years they could spend finding the right fit for themselves.
It's exhausting just thinking about it.
Because vulnerability requires risk. Guarding a perimeter requires none, but it also yields no real intimacy.
Wow.
When a seaguller spends their life managing defenses, they completely avoid the vulnerability required to build something authentic.
So for you listening, this is really the ultimate litmus test for the connections in your life. You have to step back and brutally ask yourself, is this relationship feeding my growth, or is it just feeding my insecurities?
That is the defining question. Because if it is just validating your fears of abandonment while keeping you tethered to a phone waiting for a text, you are participating in your own starvation.
And to stop participating in your own starvation, you need an escape plan. Luckily, the source provides highly practical, actionable steps to banish these birds from your life.
And it all revolves around removing the ambiguity they thrive in.
Exactly. The primary defense strategy is establishing rigorous, unyielding boundaries.
And this isn't about maintaining some vague internal feeling of, oh, I won't let them treat me poorly.
No, it has to be concrete.
It is about implementing finite, measurable timelines for how a connection should progress.
The article references the 3-3-3 dating rule. Let's break down exactly what that means in practice, because I think it's a brilliant framework for setting mental checkpoints.
It's a great tool. So the 3-3-3 rule means 3 dates, 3 weeks, or 3 months. It acts as a progressive gauge for the relationship.
Okay, so by date 3...
By date 3, you should have a solid baseline vibe check. You know if you like being around them.
Makes sense. And by week 3...
By week 3, there should be a demonstration of consistent mutual interest. You're communicating regularly. It feels reciprocal.
Okay, and then the big one, month 3.
Month 3 is where you hit the critical intention check. If you hit that 3-month mark, and they are still dodging any conversation about exclusivity.
But they suddenly get icy and withdrawn when you mention going to a party where other single people might be fun.
Exactly. The alarm bells should be deafening. You cannot let a nebulous talking phase drag on for 8 months.
Because those mental checkpoints force you to evaluate the reality of the situation rather than just the potential you were hoping for.
Right. And part of hitting those checkpoints requires active, direct communication. The source insists this is absolutely non-negotiable.
You have to ask them, point blank, where things stand and what their intentions are. And Dr. Lee points out the ultimate red flag here.
The non-answer.
Yes. When you ask for clarity and they hem and haw, they change the subject, or they say they are just, quote, winging it.
That non-answer is your answer.
So I have to ask you listening, Are you letting someone wing it with your heart right now? Are you accepting, I don't know, from someone who expects you to act like a loyal partner?
Because Dr. Lee delivers a direct warning to the perpetrators of this behavior, too.
He does. He says if you are the one doing this, you need to see go away, which is
I
amazing.
see, go away. I love it. But seriously, you cannot weaponize the "we're just friends" excuse. What's fascinating here is that telling someone you are just friends does not absolve you of the emotional damage you cause
Hmm.
if you are simultaneously manipulating their environment to keep them single.
You can't have it both ways.
You really can't. Demanding a clear timeline is exactly like calling a bluff in poker. You are forcing them to show their cards.
And if they are holding a weak hand of, let's just see where things go, and you place your chips on the table demanding a real relationship, they have to fold and leave the table.
Ambiguity is the seagull's preferred habitat. They cannot survive in the harsh light of clear expectations.
So if you are not going to commit, you have to be willing to let them fly away. And if you are the victim, you have to be willing to walk away from the slot machine.
You have to just cash out and leave.
Absolutely. So just to distill the essential mechanisms from Dr. Lee's research, seagulling is an active, ego-driven blockade. It is a psychological safety net built by someone who hoards your time and attention without romantic intent, deliberately preventing you from finding someone who actually wants to build a life with you.
It operates on variable rewards and ethical loopholes, and it starves both of you of real vulnerability.
And the only cure is rigorous boundary setting, enforcing that 333 rule, and having the courage to call their bluff with unambiguous communication.
Because it requires internalizing the fact that you deserve a connection where someone is genuinely excited to choose you every day, not someone who just wants to make sure no one else gets to choose you.
So, what does this all mean for you? We've focused this entire discussion on romantic dating, mapping out the terrain of modern relationship traps. But human psychology rarely stays neatly confined to just one arena of our lives.
So it bleeds into everything.
The mechanisms of control, possessiveness, and variable rewards bleed into everything we do.
Because the behavioral patterns we tolerate in our personal lives often mirror the exact patterns we accept in our professional lives.
Right, so where else in your life are you being seagulled? Think about your career for a moment. Do you have an employer, a manager, or a company that operates exactly like this?
That's a really interesting application of the concept.
They drop just enough professional trinkets, right? Like a small, unexpected bonus, or giving you a high visibility project just for the exposure, or dangling a vague, undocumented promise of a promotion next quarter.
We'll reevaluate your salary in 6 months.
Exactly. And they do this specifically to keep you complacent, to stop you from answering messages from LinkedIn recruiters, even though they have absolutely no real intention of advancing your career or paying you what you're worth.
The underlying dynamic is identical. A corporate seagull wants the exclusivity, the loyalty, and the premium benefits of your talent entirely without offering the commitment of a real promotion, a title change, or a fair salary.
They are building a perimeter around your professional potential.
That is so true.
So beware the corporate seagulls, too. Whether it is in a romantic relationship or in a cubicle, anyone who demands your absolute loyalty while aggressively refusing to commit to your future is just hovering.
They're just blocking your light.
Reclaim your time from anyone who is just guarding the french fry without taking a bite. Stay curious, protect your peace, and we will see you next time.